Hello 12, welcome to another video. We are looking at hormones, namely aldosterone and anti-diuretic hormone in the regulation of water and salt levels in the blood. We're also going to kick you off down the path of looking at a condition where aldosterone cannot be secreted by the body. Let's get stuck into it. The first one is just an outline. So remember, an outline is big picture stuff. So we're looking at the role, what's their job, and the two that we're looking at is aldosterone and ADH, which stands for anti-diuretic hormone. And the context of which we're looking at these is what they do for the regulation of water and salt levels in blood. So in case you missed a conversation in your biology career about what hormones are, here's a little refresher. So they are chemical control substances, and they're secreted by glands from the endocrine system. These are excreted directly into the bloodstream, which means if we've got nerves that carry electrical messages, well, we've got the circulatory system in the bloodstream to carry chemical messages. So they travel around the body, and when they reach their target cells, these cells respond. So a common one that you might be familiar with is adrenaline. Adrenaline is secreted in the adrenal glands, which we will come across in a little bit, and it affects many parts of the body. That's a good example of one that you'll already be familiar with. Okay. So the main role so far, in terms of the context of our nephron, which we've seen before, is that hormones make adjustments, and these adjustments are to do with homeostasis. All right, when you think about a factor becoming too high, well, the role of homeostasis is to make that factor come back down to certain limits. So if we look at this little nephron over here, what we've got is we've got this filtrate entering the Bowman's capsule here, which surrounds the glomerulus, and it goes into the proximal distal tubule, goes down our loop of Henle, and then it comes back up here. And there are some processes going on which you've seen so far that happens in here, but largely this is all done up to about this point here. This is all done passively. So basically, nature can just nature's gradients control what's going on here, and that's great. But sometimes that might not be what we need. So we want to be able to regulate this. So adjustments are made in the latter half of the nephron here. So we're looking at the distal convoluted tubule up here and the collecting duct. These are the two areas where our hormones are going to act upon. It does this by largely either causing the active reabsorption of substances, or changing the walls of the collecting duct, their permeability, whether it increases the size of that permeable hole or not. So let's have a look and see what's going on. First off, we've got to remember that the hypothalamus, which is located in the brain, is really a massive part of homeostasis, and it regulates a lot of the substances. It's got a lot of chemical receptors that help us regulate a lot of the conditions of our body. So this is our kind of like our go-to gland here at the moment. Alright, so moving into our first hormone, we have anti-diuretic hormone. Right, it's produced by the pituitary gland, and if you Google the pituitary gland, you'll notice that it is basically, it looks like a big ball sack hanging off the hypothalamus. And it sounds funny, but it's exactly what it looks like. So this pituitary gland, if told by the hypothalamus to secrete, will secrete anti-diuretic hormone. If you're dehydrated, and the hypothalamus will tell the pituitary gland to stop its production if you are overhydrated. The word diuretic means to promote urine production. So anti-diuretic hormone is let's stop producing this amount of urine. Let's restrict the amount of urine being produced. And if you're restricting it, then that water has to go somewhere, and it goes back into the body. Alright, so I've just put these notes here for you guys. I won't actually go through it because I think I've got an animation that I think will explain it a little bit better, but they are for your reference. Because one of the things that you might want to do with this information is to construct a feedback mechanism, so that a negative feedback mechanism, so that you understand the big picture processes and whatnot. So that's going to be. So with this animation, we have filtrate moving through the nephron, and as it gets to the distal tubule, we have water being moving through the membranes and then through the collecting duct through the membranes there because of the increased permeability. Alright, so our next hormone is aldosterone, and this controls the reabsorption of salts. Now, you might go, oh, well, what are salts useful for? Salts are really useful for bolstering blood volume. And blood volume is important because it maintains blood pressure. So we have chemical receptors that detect whether or not salt is too low in, particularly sodium. So if sodium levels are too low, the adrenal gland secretes aldosterone into the bloodstream. It causes the cell lining in the cells lining the distal convoluted tubule and collecting ducts to actively transport more sodium ions into the blood. Chlorine ions follow the positively charged sodium, and sodium chloride is salt, so we get to say that salt is reabsorbed. This hormone is not produced, or its production is decreased if we have too much salt now in our bodies, and that excess salt ends up being excreted into the urine. Okay, so in this animation we have filtrate moving through the body. The body says, hey, I've got low amounts of sodium, so we have sodium moving out, chlorine moving out, and then water following it because the osmotic gradient is different. So, from the animations that you've seen and the conversations that we've had, you should be able to start realizing that between ADH and aldosterone, we have, and the way that they affect the nephron with reabsorption, our body is able to maintain a constant osmotic balance of water and dissolved salt. It's everywhere. Alright, so getting on to our second dot point, let's have a look at this one. You are going to present information. This is a skill. Yeah, remember it's a 9.2.3 point S3. This is a skill. So your skill today is going to be presenting information. And what you need to do is outline, so big picture stuff, the general use of hormone replacement therapy in people who cannot secrete aldosterone. So, let's look at some questions that you might need to do some research into. The first thing is you've got to go back if you haven't quite it hasn't quite sunk in what aldosterone does, then I suggest you do a little bit more research on that, because that's kind of critical. But a couple of things. First off, what's the disease caused if you cannot secrete aldosterone? It's pretty straightforward. If you have a condition, generally it's named after someone, so figure out what that is. Tell me what happens to a person if they can't secrete aldosterone, and this is kind of the opposite effect of, if you know what aldosterone does, then you can kind of pretty much make some good statements about what happens if you can't do it. But you might want to go and kind of brush up on information to check that. The next one is what's the name of the replacement substance given to patients with this disease? Because the idea is that it is hormone replacement therapy. So they're giving someone something. I'd like you to figure out what that is. you might want to do have a little bit of a look into what that substance actually does, and are there any major drawbacks or side effects? And bonus points if you can tell me why we have a picture of Jane Austen in this presentation. In order to present your findings, we're going to ask you to do something a little bit different rather than standing up and giving a talk or writing a poster or a report or something like that. Let's mix it up a bit. So you've got 4 options. You can make an infographic, you could make a comic, you could make a video, or you could just do an audio recording. Now, if you're not sure how to do any of those things above there, firstly, Google is your best friend. Google that shit. Okay? Like, straightforward. There are how-tos on YouTube, there are how-tos on, just by Google searching, you'll be right. If you're still stuck, talk to us in class. Alright? Talk to your peers, find out something that you want to do. Now, the bottom 2 are relatively straightforward, I think, but there are online webcomic creators, there's infographic, online infographic stuff. You can do an infographic in Word if you wanted to. Like, there's a bunch of different ways, but we want you to see if you can kind of really just build a different skill. Alright, that's it from us. See you.